The following is a CNN special report.
As I go around the country and talk to people about lessons from Katrina, one of them is, on any given day, Mother Nature can destroy anything built by man.
Hello and welcome to the CNN special report, Katrina, the storm that never stopped. I'm Anderson Cooper reporting from New Orleans. 10 years ago, when Hurricane Katrina slammed into the Gulf Coast, many parts of this city were left underwater. Most of the residents managed to evacuate, but thousands either chose to remain here or didn't have the means to get out before the storm hit. More than 1,800 people lost their lives, but you might be surprised to learn that the exact death toll is still not known. The remains of more than 50 victims were never even claimed by any family members, and the remains of more than 30 victims were never even identified. This is a memorial park built 3 years after the storm, built in the shape of Katrina's eye, that actually houses the remains of those unclaimed, unidentified victims. We're going to take you back in the next hour to some of the places that we reported on in 2005, and you're going to meet survivors who say that for them, in so many ways, Katrina really is the storm that never stopped.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm not doing good.
What happened?
The house just split in half.
Your house split in half?
Right here on Hollingham, Bayview. Back, we got up in the roof, all the way to the roof, and water came, and the house just opened up, divided.
Who was at your house with you?
My wife.
Where is she now?
Can't find her body. She gone.
You can't find your wife?
Oh, she told me. She told me. I tried. I hold her hand tight as I could, and she told me, "You can't hold me." She said, "Take care of the kids and the grandkids and my kids."
What's your wife's name in case we can put this out there?
Tony Jackson.
Okay, and what's your name?
Hardy Jackson.
Where are you guys going?
We ain't got nowhere to go, nowhere I'm going. I'm lost. That's all I had. That's all I had.
Like so many others, Hardy Jackson didn't realize how fast the floodwaters would rise, how dangerous it was to stay at home in Biloxi, Mississippi. Hardy's wife, Tanette, was a good swimmer and didn't want to leave, so Hardy decided to stay with her. Deep down, Tanette must have sensed the danger, because she sent their 3 children and grandchildren away from the house to higher ground.
This is a picture, the only picture with my mom and my dad together that was able to be saved.
Tony, Hardy and Tanette's daughter, was only 15 when Katrina hit.
I was trying to beg to stay, but my dad told me, your mom knows best, so just go on and go to your friend's house.
Tanette and Hardy were sleeping in their house when the water rushed in. Hardy woke to find it rising around their bed. They went quickly to the attic.
He said as they sat up in the attic, the water started rising. The waves it wasn't just little waves, it became bigger waves and stuff. And he said he seen the other houses collapsing.
And that's exactly what happened to their house. It collapsed on top of them.
One piece of the house went one way with my mom, and the other piece went one way with him. When he felt the house hit up against the tree, he was able to grab up onto a branch and pull himself up in the tree to make sure, because he couldn't swim. As he reached down to, grab my mom's hand, he had my mom's hand for a few minutes, and he said he could tell that he was losing her.
You can't find your wife?
Oh, she told me, she told me I tried. I hold her hand tight as I could, and she told me, you can't hold me.
I'm sorry.
Tony was devastated then and still is now. She misses her mom every single day.
But she was like my best friend, the best. I mean, in my eyes, no wrong, no wrongdoings, no anything. She was perfect to me. Only if I could have her back just for one day.
Tanette Jackson's body was never found. In 2012, a judge issued a death certificate based on the amount of time she'd been missing. It's possible her body was recovered, but she was never identified and never claimed. And that has haunted Tony for all these years.
I used to question myself, like maybe I could go out there and look and go to different places and find her.
The family eventually moved to Atlanta, but they struggled to move on from Katrina. The pain of losing Tanette never went away, especially for Hardy.
I tried to save you. I tried, baby. Why you let go? Why?
Hardy Jackson died of cancer in 2013.
For it to be so many years, and that feeling is still the same, like it was yesterday.
Like it was yesterday. 10 years later, that's what so many Katrina survivors will tell you it feels like. The memories still vivid, the pain still sharp. For so many, especially those who lost loved ones, it's like the storm never stopped.
It's really hard to get an estimate, but I'm sure it's 50% more than the official figure, which is around 1,800.
Talk to me? Talk to me. Are you all right?
John Mutter studies the effects of natural disasters at Columbia University and says the official death toll from Katrina is far too low. He thinks more than 3,500 people perished because of the storm. The reason it's hard to get a final number is because some people were at first deemed missing, like Tanette Jackson, while others died after being displaced by the storm.
If you were trying to escape and you rolled your car and you died in a car accident the day before, well, that wouldn't have happened otherwise. And then how many days afterwards do you keep counting? And if you died because of the exacerbation of an existing condition, something you would have died of anyway, maybe even a few weeks later, should you be counted? So there's no uniform standards about this.
John Mutter has made a list of every death related to Katrina, using records from the state, from media, and asking anyone out there who knows of a person missing or dead to send him information, which he then tries to verify. 10 years later, and he is still compiling that list, still counting the dead.
It's a moral issue. We know how many people die in car accidents. We know how many people died in 9/11. down to one, you know. If anything like, the military know how many people die. When there's a natural disaster, we guess and forget it. I think there's something wrong if we don't try to account for everybody.
Every person who died, every body collected in the storm's aftermath had a story to tell. Every victim, a life worth remembering. When I was in Louisiana and Mississippi during Katrina, it haunted me to see the dead and not know who they were, who they had been. 10 years later, and now I finally know the story of at least one of the victims I saw in the streets of New Orleans. This is the levee on the Industrial Canal in New Orleans. It borders the lower 9th Ward. In 2005, when the storm hit, the levees breached and the water just came pouring into this neighborhood. It was basically wiped out. Not only were homes flooded, many homes were ripped off their foundations by the force of the rushing water. Following the storm, a lot of people in this neighborhood felt like they'd been abandoned. As you can see, homes have been rebuilt, but there's still many empty lots. Many residents have simply never returned.
Ladies and gentlemen, I wish I had better news for you, but we are facing a storm that most of us have feared. I do not want to create panic, but I do want the citizens to understand that this is very serious and it's of the highest nature.
The dire warnings came late, the mandatory evacuation order later still. Many didn't have the means to leave. Some didn't have a car, didn't have a place to go, or the money to pay for a hotel room in Baton Rouge or any place else away from Katrina's path. Others didn't really believe the warnings, didn't know the levees would fail.
Our concern was that we would have, because of the size of the storm, catastrophic flooding of New Orleans. In other words, the surge pouring into the city from surrounding areas.
In 2005, Ivor Van Heerden was working at the Hurricane Center at LSU. He watched the storm approach, knowing the damage and death it could bring.
It was dread, fear, and just, man, we got to warn. We got to tell as many people as we can to get out.
Van Heerden spent decades studying hurricanes in the Gulf Coast, looking at the possibility of a storm so powerful it could cause a surge that would overtop the levees that protect New Orleans. When he looked at the models for Katrina, he feared this was it. Van Heerden knew not everyone would leave, and when he got word the levees had failed, all he could do was sit by and watch.
You know people are going to die, and you feel helpless, like, I'm trying. Sorry. Still some deep scars.
These are some of the very first aerial pictures of what New Orleans looks like today.
The flooding left 80% of New Orleans underwater.
Even though we had predicted it, even though on paper we knew what was going to happen, the first time I actually saw it from the air, I just couldn't believe it. You know, it was a sight beyond my own imagination.
No one who was there at the time could believe what we were seeing. Bodies in the streets, human beings decomposing for days. About a week after the storm hit, I was in a small boat on a flooded street in New Orleans. We came across the body of a man laying on top of a car. I've never forgotten the moment. It's a horrific sight. There's a man dead on top of a car just a few feet away. He drowned in the floodwaters. He's terribly decomposed. There's no way to tell how many people have died here in New Orleans. A lot of the people who've no doubt drowned inside their homes, and their homes are still flooded, and rescuers haven't been able to get to them. It's a sickening sight, and it is just incredible to think that you're in the United States. I've never seen anything like this in the United States. This is something we've seen in Rwanda, in the genocide, in Sri Lanka after the tsunami, but a week after a storm to still have bodies exposed, just laying out dead is, it's mind-boggling. It's still mind-boggling to remember exactly what it was that happened here on this spot. This is where we saw that man laying dead on the roof of a car. Right over there by that chain link fence is where he was. We didn't know his name. We didn't know how he'd ended up here. Rescue crews were too busy focused on trying to save those who were still living to even think about recovering the dead at that point. 10 years later, however, we do know who that man was. His name was Jerry Peters. He was 64 years old, and it turns out his family goes back generations in New Orleans. Jerry Peters' great-grandfather founded a small church on this plot of land in New Orleans' 7th Ward back in 1918. His name was Joseph Davis. Today, the church is run by Jerry Peters' nephew, Pastor Jerry Darby. Hello. Hey, it's so nice to meet you, Pastor.
Pleasure to meet you, sir.
Thanks so much for having us. It turns out Pastor Darby was named after his uncle, Jerry Peters. You didn't call him Uncle Jerry, though?
No, I called him Uncle Fat. Yes.
Uncle Fat?
Uncle Fat, yeah. He was kind of chubby guy. In fact, that's what he was known as. Even among his brothers and sisters, everybody called him Fat.
Is that right?
Yes, that was his name.
This is Jerry Peters, dressed as a Mardi Gras Indian. It's the only photo of him that survived the storm. Jerry grew up in New Orleans, one of 11 kids, and he had 2 children of his own. What was your uncle like?
Very, very loving person, very, very supportive. He was my baseball coach, of course.
He taught you how to play baseball?
Taught me how to play baseball, taught me how to play football.
The morning of the storm, Pastor Darby called his uncle. The rest of the family were evacuating to Houston. It was the last time he would speak to Uncle Fat.
You know, it was our understanding that he was going to leave, that evening, and obviously we were quite optimistic and hopeful that he would be well.
Do you know why he didn't get out?
He just chose not to, thinking that in the evening time it would still be conducive to his being able to get out. One thing I also mentioned about him, Ensign, he was a non-swimmer. I know
he didn't know how to swim.
He didn't swim at all, and he was deathly afraid of water.
Jerry Peters' body was eventually recovered on September 11th. When the family got word, Pastor Darby was devastated. They didn't know how he died or how he ended up floating in the water 6 blocks from his home. Pastor Darby didn't know that his uncle's body was found on top of a car until now. I saw your uncle, and I always worried as a reporter that I didn't want family members seeing their loved ones on television. I thought so much about him, and it's why I wanted, when we were able to track you down, I wanted to meet you, because there's some things you never forget, and some images you never forget, and seeing your uncle is something I'll never forget, and it's nice to know who he was in life.
Absolutely.
A lot of people lose loved ones and never know. Does it bother you not to know what happened?
Initially it did. I found some measure of solace and comfort in the fact that God knows. There are certain things in life, Anderson, we teach and believe that are inexplicable. That's one of them, and so this is some measure, again, of solace, too, that we share, because I did not know whether he was just dumped with everybody else, but to know that you vividly, in a very picturesque way from what I'm gathering, you saw him yourself on the car. That does bring some measure of comfort to at least know that somebody saw him, and he wasn't just on some heap pile,
right. To not be able to put a name to the person that we were seeing was one of the things that always struck me as particularly painful.
Yes.
And so to be able to finally put a name to your uncle is for me powerful. 10 years after Katrina, Jerry Peters remains very much alive in the hearts of those who knew him and loved him. They remember the way he lived his life, not just how his life came to an end. Not every victim of the storm died in the floodwaters. Some thought they were being taken to safety. Some believed they'd been promised help, only to find horror in the one place of refuge they were offered.
It is just heartbreaking that these people have been sitting there without food, without water, waiting for these buses to take them away, and they keep asking us, when are the buses coming? When are the buses coming? And you just have to say, I don't know. I really don't know.
For those who didn't leave the city, the Superdome was set up as a shelter from the storm. Shelton Alexander is a poet who lives in St. Bernard Parish. He planned to evacuate the day before Katrina hit, but with only a half tank of gas in his car, he didn't think he'd make it north to Baton Rouge. So he and his cousin headed to the Superdome.
I know if we had to, the shelter of last resort would be the Superdome.
It's not going to be the best environment, but at least you will be safe.
With Nagin saying that at the last minute, it did give some security in a sense of, if you do get stranded, a storm should only last a couple of days. This the Superdome, like what can go wrong? I guess we all beg to differ now, but at the time it did sound good. So it's like right now.
Shelton knew the storm would be bad and wanted to videotape his experience.
If we can get some shelter, we'll be all right. Right now they're gonna start packing the Superdome.
This is what he saw when he finally arrived. Long lines of people waiting to get in.
What the hell are they?
Up to 30,000 people did make it into the Superdome, but when the storm hit, a sense of panic began to spread.
Now that's what it's like live inside the Superdome.
When the levees breached, the floodwaters rose, but the downtown Superdome stayed dry. Eventually, it was overwhelmed with people, so others began to go to the convention center.
We saw an older woman, someone's mother, someone's grandmother, in a wheelchair, her dead body pushed up against the side of the convention center with a blanket over it. Right on the ground next to her, another dead body wrapped in a white sheet. People are literally dying.
Herbert Freeman was taking care of his 91-year-old mother, Ethel. She was infirm and legally blind and had lived through many other storms. But when the floodwaters threatened their home, Herbert decided it was time to leave.
And I said, I'm going to Superdome, and somebody hollered, Superdome crowded, don't go there. Go to the convention center with them. Bring your mama to the convention center. That's what I did. I went to the convention center.
He says he was told buses at the convention center were taking people out of New Orleans, so he wheeled her all the way there through floodwaters, thinking they would be safe. At the convention center, however, there was no power, no air conditioning, no medical care, and most important of all, there were no buses. People were desperate for help, including Ethel and Herbert Freeman. I spoke to Herbert in 2005 after the storm.
Oh, well, I was confused. I was angry. I didn't know what to do, but I had prayed, and the Spirit told me just to, hold out a little longer, that my help was coming,
Help came too late for Ethel Freeman. She died 24 hours after reaching the convention center. 10 years later, Herbert Freeman still vividly remembers the moment he realized his mother was gone.
So when I went and checked to try to, shake her where she can get up, and she didn't respond. And then they had a woman out there say she was a nurse. She said, I'm a registered nurse, baby. Let me see what's happening. And she went and she told me, she said, no, your mama dead. I said, yeah, I see. So,
Not only was Ethel Freeman dead, there was nowhere to put her body. So Herbert covered her with a blanket given to him by a stranger and left her by this side door. 3 days later, the buses finally came and Herbert evacuated, leaving his mother's body behind. He wrote his name and phone number on a piece of paper and slipped it inside one of Ethel's pockets, hoping someone would find it and give his mother's body back to him once the crisis was over. It would be 2 whole months before anybody could tell Herbert Freeman where his mother's body had been taken. Ethel Freeman's death became a symbol of the government's failure to help those who needed it most.
I remember seeing that image, and it was heartbreaking. It only reminded us that we couldn't work off a calendar, and we need to work off a clock. We need to move fast, because more people would die if we didn't speed up the evacuation.
General Russell Honoré is a Louisiana native who was called in to head up the National Guard's effort to restore order and coordinate relief.
Put those damn weapons down! I'm not gonna tell you again, goddammit! Get those goddamn weapons down!
His first stop was the Superdome.
There was a level of anticipation and murmuring in the cloud. I think one of the things, once the helicopter sounded, the helicopter stopped. It was like a constant murmuring, people talking among themselves. And it was the most eerie thing I've ever heard because there was no other sound.
Like so many others, Shelton Alexander was ready to get out.
Did not come and get us. We stuck here. We running out of food, and it just don't seem like nobody's coming at all.
The Superdome was breaking down. The toilets overflowed. People were understandably angry. But in the middle of all of this, an uplifting moment caught by Shelton on his camera.
We got to come together. We got to do something. Y'all want to march and sing? Man, let's do that. So one minute we this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh. Dark, and it was darkness, and we gonna let it shine, even in the midst of the dark, I thought that just was real, real, real powerful.
I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Hallelujah!
6 days after the storm, and finally the Superdome and Convention Center were mostly evacuated. Buses took people to places like Houston and Atlanta.
Yeah, it's hard, man, still. I need to just get out of here because it's just too painful to just even imagine.
Shelton's home, like so many in St. Bernard Parish, was destroyed, but he returned to rebuild. His life has changed a lot since Katrina. He lost many family members in the years after the storm and has struggled to support himself. He's turned his experiences into poetry.
The trucks loaded with supplies, probably more than we needed. They didn't let the trucks through. I still can't believe it. Third world country, how we was treated. I wrote this piece So history isn't repeated. Even when I'm dead and gone and the Lord calls me home, they'll remember this poem, Poetic Storm, inside the Superdome.
New Orleans wasn't the only city to suffer from the storm. In the days after Katrina, I was in Waveland, Mississippi, a town that saw its own share of destruction and grief.
We are grateful for the military assets that are being brought to bear. I want to thank Senator Frist and Senator Reid for their extraordinary efforts, Anderson. Tonight, I don't know if you've heard, maybe you all have announced it, but Congress is going to an unprecedented session to pass a $10 billion supplemental bill tonight to keep FEMA and the Red Cross up and operating.
Excuse me, Senator, I'm sorry for interrupting. I haven't heard that because for the last 4 days, I've been seeing dead bodies in the streets here in Mississippi, and to listen to politicians thanking each other and complimenting each other, you know, I got to tell you, there are a lot of people here who are very upset and very angry and very frustrated, and when they hear politicians thanking one another, it just, it kind of cuts them the wrong way right now. Right after Katrina struck, before going to New Orleans, I spent several days in Mississippi, reporting from Waveland. There were houses all along here. The town took a direct hit from the storm. Many of the residents who survived lost everything.
It's from our room. It's from our room.
It's devastating. I mean,
Oh gosh. Oh God.
Actually, Waveland looked like it had been wiped off the map. I went out with a search and rescue team from Virginia who were looking for the dead. At this house, a neighbor said 4 members of a family had drowned inside. And they've been inside for 48 hours now, so when the rescue workers break inside the home and open up the windows, the smell, it's overwhelming. It just goes down the block. Christina and Edgar Bain lived here with their 2 teenage sons, Edgar Jr. and Carl. The 2 boys were handicapped, and so the family decided not to evacuate. When the floodwaters rushed in, all 4 drowned in their home. A month after their bodies were recovered, I met Edgar and Christina's daughters, Laura and Serena Bain.
And this was the kitchen. This is where they had died.
They are the only remaining members of the family and had to identify the bodies of their parents and brothers. What's going to happen tomorrow?
We don't know. We're just basically living day by day.
This is the house where Edgar and Christina Bain lived and died with their 2 teenage sons. The house itself has been rebuilt, it's been refurbished. There's another family living here now. 10 years ago, 95% of the homes in Waveland were damaged in Hurricane Katrina. There's little sign of that destruction, but you talk to anybody who lived through it, and they all say the same thing. They will never forget what happened here.
Tall and slinky. Yeah. That's Edgar and that's Carl. And it's my dad at a wrestling match.
Do you think much about Katrina?
All the time.
All the time?
All the time.
Even though it's been 10 years, you think about it
all the time.
Laura Bain is now 35. She lives not far from the house where her parents and brothers died. She has her own family now, but for her, the storm has never really stopped.
So sad. This is all the rubble. And right here, you see how the blinds are? Mm-hmm. After the water receded down, the way my dad landed was as if he was standing up. And he was like looking out the kitchen window because his elbows was like this on the counter.
Did you ever figure out what exactly happened to your parents and brothers?
No. My mom knew how to swim. She was a good swimmer. The only thing I can think of my mom watched my dad and my brothers drown, and I believe that she truly drowned it intentionally with them.
She didn't want to leave them.
Right, of course not.
The Bain sisters hoped to move away from Waveland, move away from the memories of what happened here. Even though much of the Gulf Coast has been rebuilt, there are reminders of the storm everywhere, some too big to ignore.
What's going to happen to some of these patients if you don't get them out of here?
2 of them have already died here on this ramp waiting to get out.
Two died
in this very spot.
2 died here because you
2
couldn't get them out.
died here because we could not get them out.
Before Katrina hit, this was the biggest hospital in New Orleans, with the busiest emergency room in the country.
This was our auditorium, and now it is just the emergency department.
Charity Hospital was founded to serve the poor in the 1700s, and in 2005 it was doing exactly that, providing medical care for the poor and the uninsured in New Orleans. When Katrina struck, the hospital flooded. The patients, some of them very sick, were left stranded.
We're basically back to primitive medicine, just kind of guessing and treating patients for whatever we think they have.
Dr. Roderick Bennett was a third-year ER resident in 2005. He was 29 years old then and was looking forward to a long career at Charity.
What's up, buddy? There was a point where I said, hey, these patients, maybe they can hold out a day. Okay, they've made it 2 days, but now we're going on the 3rd day. You know, we don't have the supplies to do all this.
The power went out and emergency generators were unreliable.
We have no showers or toilets at all, or running water at all.
The biggest problem was keeping the patients alive and hydrated. With no power, there were no machines to help.
Is it going?
Yes.
Oh, yes, it's happening.
Yes, baby.
And there was no word on when these patients could evacuate.
I got a lot of water into my boots, and I think it caused an infection.
The most concerned patients I was most concerned about were what we call the intensive care patients, because a lot of them were elderly. So they're elderly, they were already very sick before all this happened, but no air conditioning, it's 96 degrees, it's terribly humid. You know, just by being that ill in itself makes you prone to dehydration. And so, you know, these patients are really, they're struggling for their lives.
But Dr. Bennett and the rest of the staff found ways to make the days bearable.
You filming? Oh, Lord.
They bonded with each other, bonded with the patients, tried to keep spirits up.
I'm ready for my close-up.
There are people giving haircuts, there are people singing.
Joy is mine. Joy is mine. Joy today is mine.
So it was tough, but it was, as I said, there were some bright moments as well.
What's your name?
It's not Katrina.
The brightest moment came when they got word the choppers were finally coming. It had been almost 5 days. The doctors and nurses at Charity had kept all their patients alive. The only ones who died outside, waiting for helicopters, their bodies stored in the stairwell. The staff were the last to leave.
It's definitely tough seeing the place that you love so much, and just sitting here now.
Charity never reopened. For a long time, Dr. Bennett avoided passing by the empty hospital. It was just too painful to see it untouched since Katrina. He's moved out of New Orleans and now practices medicine in Florida, though he hopes one day to return to the city he still loves. Charity Hospital is in some ways an unofficial memorial, an unintended reminder of what happened here 10 years ago. But built on top of the old Charity Hospital Cemetery is another memorial built specifically to remember. The Katrina Memorial, which houses the remains of the unclaimed, unidentified victims of the storm. More than 80 of them.
The kids stay with you the most.
And you saw that?
Yeah.
Dr. Louis Cataldi was the medical examiner for Louisiana during Katrina. He was tasked with identifying all of the dead recovered from the storm.
You've got to understand the condition of these bodies. They're totally unidentifiable.
It's like a puzzle.
Very much.
It was difficult to say the least. Many bodies were badly deteriorated from the floodwaters and from the heat. The job was never finished. Funding ran out in 2006. Just as the failure to reopen Charity Hospital haunts Dr. Bennett, the fact that so many of the dead were never identified pains Dr. Cataldi.
I still feel like I left the mission uncompleted. Yeah, that's a hole in me. Oh yeah, that's going to always be a hole in me. You know, when I got started in this whole process, it's about the one person, not about the masses. And if you can't identify that one person and get them back to their loved one and gets closure, I think it's a failure on my part.
The memorial is the final quiet resting place for those who died a violent death, the unclaimed, unidentified victims of the storm.
I hope you're coming back to New Orleans. It really is that land of dreams. There's no other city like New Orleans.
Though the city and the coast has largely rebuilt, the levees strengthened, the places and the people are not the same as they were. Parts of New Orleans are thriving, pulsing with life. Other parts remained abandoned, passed by without a glance.
I knew that I just couldn't stay away. So now I'm back and I'm home to stay, to rebuild my life in New Orleans. Stormy weather may come and go. Mother Nature may put on her show. Still in my mind, there's nowhere else to go. So baby, won't you please come home? New Orleans is where I want to stay, so I can play my music every night and day. There's no other city like New Orleans.
It was the worst natural disaster ever to hit the United States, and for some, the storm just never stopped.